And I'd like to, of course, thank my lovely wife, Christine Letourneau, over there in the black dress, LBD, who brought this together, along with Kit, who is the owner of Frontier Town, who was instrumental with the inspiration behind this. And myself, my name is William Letourneau with Artist Rescue Picture Framing. And we're picture framers in the area. We're also helping to co-host this event. I would like the vendors to know, if they don't already realize, but we do offer, we're offering 3 awards today for the displays, the demonstrations that are going on today, because obviously we really respect and appreciate the vendors that made this first annual event happen. Obviously, we look forward to a bigger event next year. We are learning as we go, and but in the meantime, we wanted to recognize those people in 3 areas, and that is we want to do a Best of Show award, 3 areas: one for displaying best table, one for best spirit, that is the spirit of the event. We feel that they captured the best spirit of the event, and the overall presentation at our new Frontier Art Show. Now, with that, I want to let you know that this gift certificate can be used within a year, the recipient of this gift certificate, for an 11 by 14 picture, be it something you bought here today, something you have at home, a photograph, some of your own artwork. So it's 2-dimensional imagery, matted and framed, up to a 14 by 18. And so we're giving away 3 of these gift certificates today at the end of the show. So please stick around till 5 o'clock and we'll announce those winners. So I want you to know that you are appreciated and recognized. And like I said, please stick around for that. Your name may be one of the winners. Okay, so for today, I would like to demonstrate the hidden secrets of picture framing. I've been picture framing for over 25 years, and I've helped a lot of people, artists like yourselves, that maybe want to learn how to cut their own mats, make their artwork look better, but don't want to spend a lot of money. So I've taught a lot of classes over the years, and I'm always surprised at how frustrated people get when they're cutting their first mats. They end up burning through a lot of matting and sometimes cutting themselves on a mat blade. So I want to make sure that you don't have that terrible experience. If you were to buy one piece of equipment for yourself that would probably save you a lot of money in the long run, would be a simple mat cutter like this one here. So they retail for around $100, and you can cut most of your 4-ply mat board on that. This is a Logan brand, not to be brand specific, but I think they're a really reliable one. And it has, look for something that has this sort of pivotal push action lever to it. I assume that if you could see this, you'll be able to see this on the video undoubtedly, but we've set our scale over here for the increments, and it's a sliding scale, so that in this case we're going to be setting it for 2.5 inches. Now, I had pre-selected this artwork here of my lovely wife, a picture that I drawn myself with chalk. For those artists that have worked with chalk, you're probably well aware that chalk is kind of a temperamental medium to work with. But when you're measuring for artwork, you want to always consider the size of the paper as well as the frame. So one of the things that, again, commonly frustrates people that are learning to frame is the measuring. You know, they think, oh, mathematics, this is going to be really complicated. I don't know if I want to do this. But let's say you were putting a 2.5-inch border around this picture. So you would take the outer dimensions, 8 by, we'll say 11, and then you would just add 2.5 and 2.5, which would give you a total of 5. So what I always like to do was I would take my 5-inch I would take my 5 inches and then I put it on the scale and I'd say, okay, that's 13 by 16. So I went ahead and I pre-cut my mat boards 13 by 16. So we'll be looking at a double mat that shows a little bit of the green and the white. Something like that to bring out the dress. So what you do is, like I said, you cut your top mat first. So if you have a 2.5 inch mat, you need to back your sliding scale off by 1/4 of an inch. Then you put the mat board underneath, and you can't beat a trusty pencil. So you mark your board with the pencil. And you mark it all the way past to the outer margins. The big mystery to cutting a double mat is that you actually cut them together. So in this first part, you want to make sure that this window goes back in when you go to cut the second mat. So then you line up your mat cutting knife and you do a bit of an overcut, pushing all the way through and finishing. Turn the artwork or the matting. Make a second cut. Again, doing a slight overcut. Overcuts are important up to an extent because you don't want the mat board to get hung up in the corner by cutting too shallow. And you don't want to have such a long overcut that a person would see the poor cuts. Obviously, you want to have a sharp blade and preferably a clean working surface. So here's the first portion of the mat right here. What we do is we put our mat boards back together. And this is the real mystery because a lot of artists will try to cut them separately and be very disappointed in the end to find out that their mat boards don't line up. So what you want to do is you want to cut your second color, in this case it's the green, and you want to cut the outside dimensions. Remember we said it was 13 by 16. You want to cut it just a little bit under. And that won't matter because what the mat cutter is going to read from its measurement, it's going to read from the outside edge. So we took some double-sided tape, that's what this is, double-sided tape, and then we carefully position our second mat in the middle of our first board with a little swatch of tape in the middle to hold both sides together. Come back to our mat cutter, and then we adjust out. Instead, we were at 2 1/4 before, now we're at 2 1/2. So we adjust our scale, put our mat boards back under there. That window that we taped back in becomes the new undermat, which is really important for the mat cutting blade to have something to plunge into. We mark our mats. Remember, we've moved it into a 2 1/2 now. Another reason to use pencil is that it's fairly forgiving. If you get a pencil mark on a matting, it can be erased. Never use pen. And the second reason not to use pen, besides its permanence, is it's more caustic to the artwork. So if there's any pen residue, it will actually create an acidic burn on your artwork over time. So here we are back to cutting, and obviously those people watching the video will be able to see this more clearly than in person. But I'm only cutting it by approximately a 1/16 of an inch to get a nice clean cut. These are the clean beveled cuts that everybody enjoys on their artwork that really makes it look finished and professional, rather than the X-Acto knife on the kitchen table method. And if we have succeeded, you should end up with something that looks like this. Okay, let's get our model back into the picture. And then you can see the finished product right there. Ideally, the picture framer will want to adhere this artwork into the mat. The best way to do that is to create a book kind of environment. So you take your backing board, which in this case is a foam core board. That's a mat. It's a much stronger material than a mat board. It's much more rigid. You take tape and you create like a book type of hinge. Ideally, you would be using an artist tape or an acid-free tape for this. So you have a book kind of function. We flip the artwork over and we put what's called a T-hinge, the bottom part of a T-hinge. And that allows the artwork to cascade in the window. You never want to have an environment where the artwork is restrained. People that are just starting out to frame often make the mistake of thinking that they're doing a justice to their artwork by taping down all the sides. But when you do that, it constrains the artwork in the matting. And ultimately, the mats need to be, and the artwork need to be able to expand and contract inside of that frame. You don't want to have a scenario where everything is too tightly pinned in there. So the same happens if you were to tape all four sides of your artwork. So ideally, you should end up with something that looks like this, opens up, and the artwork literally floats or cascades in that window. And again, this allows for maximum expanding and contracting inside of that frame so that you do not have a ripple and waving kind of effect. Okay. The last thing I want to demonstrate is using another picture frame that I've sort of set up for success here. We have a picture frame, we have the glass. Obviously you want to make sure your glass is nice and clean. The frame goes over the glass and you flip it over. So we're always working from the back of a picture frame. I like to turn the top towards me so that I always know what side is up, literally, so that I'm not inadvertently putting a picture hanging wire on upside down. Now this tool here is a point gun, Fletcher point gun. They run about 60 bucks. It's a nice tool to have. As you can see, it points in. On the other hand, if you don't want to invest in that, you can go to the hardware store and get the old glazier points that the people that put windows in often use. So in other words, it's the same tool, and then all you need is a flathead screwdriver in order to push those home. So ultimately, this tool does that job for you much quicker, but for a lower cost, you could just use a push point. Over here we have the double-sided tape that we used earlier. And you run the tape about a 1/4 inch in from the edge of the back of your frame. The reason for that is when you go to trim, you want to have enough leeway that you're not dealing with this very sticky glue. You want that to all be underneath the paper. So we have that part done.
We grab our paper, we run it along the edge, burnish the edge. Again, I always like to use a razor blade from my mat cutter as a tool for trimming away the paper. And all you need to do is use your thumb and index finger when you're trimming. After a little bit of practice, it goes very fast. They make fancy tools for this too, as you can imagine, but this is really the quickest, simplest solution. And then last but not least, we have our screw and hinge. So we're putting this, I'm just going to demonstrate. Obviously you know how to put a screw into the piece of wood, but you want to carefully put this screw in so that it doesn't come out the face of the frame. It's another common mistake that framers in their first year of framing will probably likely make without thinking about it. So you get your screws started and you run the wire through the loop, generally twice for strength. And then we do a nice twist, a nice tight braided twist. And I use this plastic coated wire versus say a galvanized wire or even a braided picture wire, because this is a much cleaner way to work, and then you just simply cut away the excess with your side cutters. So obviously we would do this other side over here, and then if you wanted to attach bumpers to create like a cushion so it doesn't move around back and forth on the wall, you can do that too. So then you have your picture finished in the frame and it's professionally sealed with a dust cover. The dust cover, besides its aesthetic, is also very valuable in keeping moisture out of your picture frame. It helps to keep condensation, moisture, and especially insects from getting into the inside of the frame. So it's not strictly for aesthetic, but it does have a very formal function. I hope these few tips helped you out today. And again, if you have any questions, you can certainly contact us at artist.rescue@gmail.com. And I'd be glad to answer any of your questions. I'm all about education and helping artists. Thank you very much for your time. Again, just as a reminder, we will be giving these out, these 3 prizes out: picture frames, custom picture frames for your art needs, and that will be announced at 5 o'clock today. Thank you again.